Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Wolves. Today on the show, we're going to talk about a couple of, we'll call them young veterans on Timberwolves standard roster contracts. Last year's rookie Leonard Miller, Josh Minott from a draft a couple of years ago. What are they doing so far in Summer League? And is it enough for them to get consideration for a rotation spot? We'll also talk about Nadir Hifi, really intriguing French-Algerian player on the Wolves roster. And we'll take a peek at what's ahead in Summer League for Minnesota and what we should be looking for. It's all upcoming on the show. Welcome in. You are Locked On Wolves.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As playoffs wind down, and they're wound down now, no more Stanley Cup, no more NBA Finals. We are into the summer, the dog days of summer. The sports simply stop sportsing like we want them to. But this summer, all summer long, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Happy Tuesday, everybody. And today here on the show, we're going to get ready for Summer League game number 3, which is today. And we'll talk a little bit. On Monday, we spent a lot of time on the rookies. We spent a lot of time on Terrence Shannon Jr., Rob Dillingham, but also Daisha Nix was really impressive in the first couple of games. We talked about how Jalen Clark was the best player on the floor for stretches. Today, I want to focus on the other quote-unquote young veterans who have a shot at a rotation spot for the Wolves. We'll talk about Josh Minott. We'll talk about Leonard Miller, what they've done so far in Summer League. We'll take a peek ahead as the Wolves play today. They play again Thursday. We'll talk about what to look for here this week for Minnesota. That's all coming on the show. A big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. And you can follow on X at Locked On T Wolves and also at Beecken with 2 B's, 2 E's, C-K-E-N. All right, let's start with Leonard Miller. Leonard Miller, of course, was a rookie last year, drafted early in the second round, and a lot of people thought it was somewhat of a steal for Minnesota. Of course, he was a top high school recruit, ended up playing with the G League Ignite instead of playing in college, and was seen as just kind of this raw point forward type talent. He's got the size, really 6'10". He's got the size to be a center in terms of height and length, but the skill set of more of a wing or even a guard at times, he kind of has the handle and the passing ability of a guard. But the question was, could he put it all together? He was a little bit raw, even coming out of coming out of the G League Ignite. And there's some maturity questions as well regarding Leonard Miller. But the idea was like he could become this high energy point forward, like 4 that can guard 3s and also some 5s and rebound like a 5, but he can shoot like a stretch 4 and he can handle like a 3 with athleticism. And he didn't get a ton of run last year in the G League. Not as much as maybe I would have expected he did. And he was good there, albeit inconsistent. We talked about that, last week, I guess, on the show, getting ready for Summer League. So what are the Wolves looking to see out of him in Summer League? I think it's growth, it's consistency in all of those areas. And I think they're looking for physicality. I think they're looking to see what he's able to do on the glass over the course of Summer League. Can he hold his own against big competition, grown men? Now, this is, of course, Summer League's a weird mix of these top picks, young athletic guys, but also some older, more experienced guys who might have the body of an NBA player, but not the athleticism, or the other way around. They may not be as big as your typical NBA frontline player, but they're athletic, or they have, the stick-to-itiveness. They're going to, they're a bulldog out there, whatever the case may be. It's a little bit all over the place. So what's he going to look like in Summer League? What are the Wolves looking for? Again, consistency, physicality, consistency on defense, smart decisions with the ball in his hands. And for the most part, we've seen that. I thought he was better in the first game than he was in the second game. He got poked in the eye in the first game, and he only ended up playing a little less than 16 minutes in game 1 against New Orleans because he got poked in the eye. But thankfully, he came back to play Sunday. So doesn't seem to be too much of a lingering issue, at least not one that'll keep him off the court. So we'll call it 16 minutes on Friday in the first game. He had 10 points and 6 rebounds, shot 3 of 8, 2 of 5 outside the arc. I thought he handled the ball well in the open floor. And that to me is one of those things that the Wolves have to be looking for, because part of the appeal of a Leonard Miller is the ability to do so many different things. And that includes having the ball in his hands and creating for others and creating for himself off the dribble, not just spot up shooting. Um, by the way, I thought the spot up shooting looked really good and really comfortable. He made 2 of his 5 3-point attempts in the first game. Second game, he only played 17 minutes as well, and he missed both of his 3-point attempts. But again, looks comfortable, looks the part. Foul trouble, something to keep an eye on. He only had 1 foul in 60 minutes in game 1. He had 5 fouls. Of course, I think you get 10 in Summer League before you actually foul out. But just in terms of, if he's in an NBA game, he hasn't played any rotation minutes yet, only garbage time at the NBA level. What's that going to look like? Is he going to be able to defend bigger players without fouling incessantly? Is he going to be quick enough to guard on the perimeter against smaller players? All legitimate questions. And we certainly aren't going to get true answers to that in Summer League. But again, the physicality inside, game 1, 6 rebounds, game 2, 3 rebounds. So overall, 9 rebounds in 33 minutes or so. That's a pretty decent rate. That's about what you're going to look for. Over the course of a full game, you want him to be in the upper single digits rebounding. Now, if he started at center in each of these games, and I think part of the reason he played less minutes in game 2, assuming it's not the eye, I mean, probably not, because he was on the floor, but the Wolves also want to get a look at Jesse Edwards, who we'll talk a little bit about as well, who is a recent signee of a 2-way contract. He's also a center and more of a traditional big bodied. He's a little bit bigger, certainly thicker, bigger frame, built more like he's not as big as Rudy Gobert, but built more like Rudy Gobert than he is like Leonard Miller. And so a different type of center. Leonard Miller, while he's playing a small ball center now, and he did it in the G League, I think his ticket to minutes at the NBA level is going to be at the 4 with the ability to play some 3 and guard some threes. Those are all legit questions about his future. I don't know that we've seen enough in Summer League through 2 games to say anything definitively, any direction about this. Again, the most impressive thing to me was decisions with the ball in his hands and his job on the glass. I think he's done a good job on the glass overall. Now, I say decisions with the ball in his hands. He's only got 1 assist, but he has 0 turnovers. And in 33-ish minutes, that's pretty good for a guy that likes to have the ball in his hands a lot. He's pretty aggressive, and he thinks of himself as a point forward. So I like what I've seen overall from Leonard Miller. I think I'd like to see him play more. But again, I think the Wolves, this is by design. Jesse Edwards is every bit as likely, I think, at this stage to find his way into a game as an emergency backup center if Gobert's out and Towns is out or somebody's in foul trouble and he's with the team on the 2-way deal. Jesse Edwards fits more with what they're going to do. And as a 5-year college player, is probably already more mature. I don't know about off the court for sure, but it wouldn't shock me if he had a higher maturity level on and off the court than somebody like Leonard Miller, who's only been a pro for, I guess, 2 years if you include the G League year, but been in the NBA for a year. Whereas, Jesse Edwards has played 5 years of college ball, and he's going to be a lower usage guy. He's going to be a screen setter. He's going to be an ancillary piece offensively and a rim protector defensively. I don't know that Leonard Miller has the consistency that the Wolves need yet. Certainly the draft pick made sense, and I'm not at all writing him off, but for where the Wolves are now as a conference finals team, Leonard Miller could have more value as a trade piece down the road, or potentially in a couple of years here if he's able to stick around as he develops, because the skill set is still there, and I think he's done well for himself so far in Summer League. I just think the Wolves are curious to see a little more of Jesse Edwards, and that may kind of curb some of the potential minutes for Miller. But very excited to see him play over the final few games of Summer League. Keep an eye out for his catch and shoot opportunities. He's got to do well there. And also defensively, I thought he was fine. Can he protect the rim a little bit? Are the rotations crisp? Is he on point? He's got 1 block through 2 games. He has 3 steals in game 1, none in game 2. So that activity level defensively is going to be something to keep an eye on as well. But I think overall he's played okay. I want to talk about Josh Minott. Lots to say about him. We'll touch briefly on Jesse Edwards and Nadir Hifi before we get into what to look out for here the rest of Summer League. All that is upcoming here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit only available to U.S. customers. Do you watch Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day long? If so, no doubt you have to turn down the volume because of all the shouting. Instead, make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, let's talk about Josh Minott. Josh Minott coming into Summer League is maybe I would say certainly the returning player that's actually played minutes for the Wolves over the past couple of years that I was most excited to see. And it's because I loved him as a prospect. I think he brings a lot to the table that the Wolves have been lacking in previous years, although because their defense was so good this year, it's maybe a little bit less urgent. Not maybe, it is less urgent now. However, they still need guys in the rotation that are going to fit the culture defensively. And Josh Minott does that. He plays all out all the time and racked up steal rates and block rates in college. I've said it a bunch of times on the show, so I don't want to rehash it completely, but basically steal and block rates that would have been either steal rate in his last year at college that would have been the best in the league had he been in the NBA, and a block rate that would have been top 10 that year in the NBA. And this is a guy who played limited college minutes, limited opportunities in college, very raw, long, not tons of natural offensive skills with the ball in his hands. But he's so active and so big and so athletic. There's just a lot to like with Josh Minott. And so what the Wolves are looking to see out of him in Summer League is, has he put any of those offensive skills together? Can he attack with the ball in his hands and get to the basket? Can he knock down, catch and shoot threes? They know he can rebound. They know he can defend. They know he's a fantastic off-ball shot blocker, weak side shot blocker, help defender. Can he stay in front of smaller, quicker guys on the perimeter? So far in Summer League, I've been very impressed. The offensive efficiency has not been there, but I go back to what I said. I think I said this yesterday, maybe late last week on the show. As important as it is to see if these guys are developing some of these other skills, by and large, if you're playing in Summer League, unless you're Rob Dillingham and this is year one, it's unlikely your future is as a top option or a number 2 option or a high usage guy who has a shot at an all-star team. That's no disrespect to any of these guys. And I certainly it's happened. Obviously, like there's plenty of former all-stars that have played in Summer League. But by and large, if you're a returning player, that's probably not where you're going to be. You're probably looking for that role to fill, that niche you're going to have for the team the following year. And like, for instance, with Jaden McDaniels a couple of years ago, he did that. He worked on his on-ball skills in Summer League. He scored a little bit. He had a couple 20-plus point games, and he had a couple of them this year in the show at the NBA level. But that's not his night in, night out. He's the 4th option, and usually he's the 4th or 5th option, no matter who he's on the floor with. But it's important to have those skills in case he's called upon, in case the team's shorthanded, in case they need somebody to have a big game like happened in the playoffs a couple of times. I don't know that Jaden McDaniels, I'm not saying he won't ever be an all-star, but the point is he's a really good role player. Most of the guys playing Summer League need to find their role. What's their role going to be at an NBA level, at the NBA level? And Josh Minott going 3 for 11 in game 1 and 4 for 10 in game 2. So 7 for 21 so far, shooting 33% from the floor. That's really not all that concerning to me. Why? Because he's doing all the other stuff well. 12 rebounds in his most recent game, plus 2 steals and a block. So 12 rebounds, 3 stocks. Game 1, he had 8 rebounds and 1 block. So combined between the two, he's got 20 rebounds and 4 stocks in 2 games in roughly 38 minutes played. That's pretty good. And he scored. It just hasn't been efficiently, but he's gotten to the line, which has helped quite a bit because he's been so aggressive going to the basket, which is also very important. Game 1, 12 points, 8 rebounds, shot only 3 of 11 and was 0 of 3 outside the arc, but he was 6 for 6 at the line. Game 2, 15 points, 12 rebounds, shot 4 of 10 from the floor, 1 of 4 outside the arc, 6 of 8 at the free throw line. So he is 12 of 14 on free throw attempts through 2 Summer League games. That's fantastic. That's a fantastic free throw rate for somebody like Josh Minott. And if he can just be a little more solid, and he's been kind of hovering around league average in the G League in terms of 3-point percentage and in limited time at the NBA level, if he could be a league average 3-point shooter that at least makes you close out to the touch, And it's not a hard closeout, but they have to at least respect you. It's not a Kyle Anderson closeout, but it's a Jaden McDaniels closeout. I know McDaniels shot 40% a couple years ago from three, but wasn't as good this year. And teams at times were daring him to shoot threes. If he forces teams to at least respect the 3-point attempt, that's going to open up the pump fake and the hard drive to the rim where he can dunk on anybody. He's a big dude. He's athletic, long arms, strong. And if he adds the element where actually, I think what I've enjoyed seeing it, but it's been sloppy, is he looking to pass the ball. He had one really nice pass out of pick and roll. I think it was the first game, but overall he's got 5 turnovers through 2 games. Just too many for a guy like Minott in the NBA regular season, because he's not going to have the ball in his hands being asked to do a whole lot with it in his hands in that scenario as much as he is in Summer League. But the point is, he's getting the chance, he's getting these reps to do this stuff, but the stuff that he needs to be good at, he's doing that well as well. He's doing that well also. He's rebounding the basketball. He's racking up stocks. I think he's been very good defensively. I've been impressed with his perimeter defense. We saw 2 seasons ago, Finch put him in at the end of quarters in a handful of games, and just end clock situations like, hey, I want another long defender on the floor. Didn't need him as much last year with Nickeil Alexander-Walker and his emergence, and also with how much better Kat and Nas were on the perimeter last season and how much better Ant continues to get defensively. But that's the type of role Minott could have this year is, hey, come in and play hard for, instead of 60 seconds or 30 seconds like a couple years ago, it's a full, 3-4 minutes, grab some rebounds, block some shots, be athletic, pump fake and get to the basket. I still think there's a real shot he gets 10th man minutes is what I've been calling it. I think it's right now him and Terrence Shannon Jr. And I think it's going to depend on the matchup, but those 2 guys are both going to have the opportunity at some of those minutes where some nights they don't play, other nights they play 12 minutes, other nights it's 2 minutes. But if somebody's out, somebody's sick, resting on a back-to-back, gets hurt, big foul trouble, it's Josh Minott or it's Terrence Shannon Jr. Almost that Troy Brown Jr. role from the beginning of the year last year. I mean, he played heavy rotation minutes a couple of times. That's just how it happens over the course of a season. And God forbid somebody gets hurt for a longer period of time. Those are 2 different players. I recognize that. Minott and Shannon, but they both bring the athleticism, the size, the perimeter defense, just in a little bit of a different package. And of course, Shannon's a better scorer. He's a better 3-point shooter. Minott's a better defender and rebounder. Probably a better overall defender, although Shannon's been impressive defensively as well. And I think he could be very good. But those guys will both get the opportunity at some of those minutes. And I've loved what I've seen so far from Minott, even if the offense hasn't been super efficient. All right, quickly, Jesse Edwards. I've liked watching him. Again, 2-way big, played last year at West Virginia, 4 years at Syracuse prior to that. He's a pick and roll big. He's going to dive through him after he sets screens. Pretty good screen setter. One of the concerns I'd seen on scouting reports from him coming out of college was, is the defense consistent? Does he know how to use his body? I actually think he's been really good. Positioning wise, verticality, I think staying vertical has been very impressive. Young rookie big men really struggle with fouling frequently in the NBA. And so far, he's only committed 5 fouls in 35 minutes, which is pretty good for a guy who's also, he's got he's got 3 blocks total over 2 games. So 3 blocks to just 5 fouls. That's not bad. Now, rebounding wise, he's got to get a little bit busier. 2 rebounds in the first game in 17 minutes. Game 2, 6 rebounds in 16 minutes. So not awful, but you'd like him to be averaging more than 4 rebounds per game if he's going to play 16, 18 minutes. I think his presence around the rim has been good. He struggled at the free throw line in limited attempts, 1 of 6 overall. Is obviously not great. But I think the feel for me has been impressive. It's been better than I expected. His positioning, again, the verticality is the most impressive thing, but I think he's got a real presence at the rim. And I think my take on it is the Wolves are counting on him to be kind of their last line of defense. He's more of a traditional 5, more of a traditional shot blocker, closer to the realm of Rudy Gobert than Luka Garza, who's more of an offensive big, who's got some size and is a little bit more of a slower, plodding big, but not a rim protector. He's more of an offensive end of the floor. And guys like Leonard Miller, Josh Minott, they're really 4s who can play the 5 in small ball lineups and just have a different skill set. Edwards is the only other big on the roster that's really that Gobert type skill set. And I think he's got a little bit of upside. He's obviously an older player, but my take is the idea is he can fill in if Rudy's resting or Rudy's hurt or whatever. They're going to give him some run at the NBA level. And I think he'll be solid, especially defensively. I think his feel for screen setting is pretty good as well. Okay. Let's close here by talking about what to look ahead for. Oh, and also Nadir Hifi. We got to talk a little bit about, Hifi, Nadir Hifi. We got to talk a little bit more about Nadir. I talked briefly about him on Monday, but I want to spend a few more minutes on him. We'll do all that here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our title sponsors at FanDuel. I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But now that we are in the dog days of summer, it is the All-Star break for MLB. There is WNBA basketball, and there's nothing else. There's no NBA. There's no NHL. There's no NFL. Training camps don't start for another week or two in the NFL. Of course, no college football. There's nothing else happening right now. So there's still some stuff, though, right? There's baseball picks back up later this week. We have the WNBA. We have the Olympics coming up soon. And even though the sports may not be sportsing like we want them to right now, FanDuel lets you keep the sports going whenever you want. All you have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime you're in the mood. This summer, FanDuel's hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. Head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right. Let's talk about Nadir Hifi before we talk about what to look for. I'll say what I said on Monday's show because I gave him like 60 seconds. Nadir Hifi has gone from like the first half of the first game, me thinking like this dude, like if you didn't know anything about him, you'd be like, this guy's the best player on the floor, right? He was a top 10 pick, top 5 pick. And then there were stretches in the second half of that game and also in the second game where it was like, how old is he? Is he just like a big high schooler that is just out here trying to shoot the ball every time he touches it? Like, I'm being a little bit harsh and maybe a little dramatic on both ends, but that's like, if I don't know, I guess nobody in Summer League really has an even keeled performance. I don't know that I describe anybody's performance as even keeled or consistent, except for maybe Terrence Shannon. I mean, all over the place, but in a good way, not a bad way. Daishin Nick's a little bit all over the place too, but Hifi, like, completely volatile. Like, he looked awesome early in the first game. And then at times it was like, what is this guy doing? He shot an identical 5 for 11 in both games, which is crazy. You're not going to believe this. I don't believe this. 5 for 11. I checked a billion times to make sure I wasn't looking at the exact same box score twice. 5 for 11, 1 for 5 outside the arc in both games. In game 1, he did not get to the line. Game 2, he was 7 of 7 at the free throw line. Now, the thing that, like, if you just look at that, you'd say, okay, so not super efficient with the 3-point shot. Overall, though, you can handle. What did he score in this game? He had 18 on 11 shots in one of the games, in the game where he got all the free throw attempts. In the first game, he had 11 on 11 shots. So the free throw attempts are, of course, the difference. 5-11's fine. You know, he'd love him to make more threes. But in the second game, he had 0 assists. He also had 0 turnovers, but 0 assists and 0 rebounds. He had 1 steal. It's the only other thing he did. But he had 18 points on 11 shots. The first game, however, he did pass the ball a little bit better. He had 5 assists, 1 turnover, and he also had 3 steals and 3 rebounds. So he was more active in game 1, and that's not a shock at all if you watch both games. That clearly was the case. The box score backs that up. Box score matches the eye test in this case. The thing I was most impressive with is something that I had flagged just watching a little bit of him preparing for Summer League and also reading a couple scouting reports that are out there, is that he plays hard all the time. And that was not oversold. 100% of the time, this dude's going just 100 miles an hour. And it's great. You'd rather have guys do that than not do that. My biggest critique, though, is surely something that Chris Finch will note, is dude never met a shot he didn't like. And I know he had the 5 assists, and I know everybody's doing this in Summer League. Like, there's so many no-pass possessions and so many just walk-up threes. Like, it's happening constantly, and it's not just Hifi. But there were a couple instances where it was like, man, this dude's got to pass the ball. But he also had a couple really nice passes. So really it fit everything I was expecting, just maybe even more of a high usage guy than I even thought. He clearly has the skill level, and I think the size. He's a little small, but big enough to play point guard if he passes the ball consistently and well enough. The 3-point shot, it's been good enough in play in Europe. If that becomes better than league average, then he's absolutely an NBA point guard. I think he's going to be able to defend. That's also a question mark. I think he's athletic enough just based on these 28 minutes or whatever in 2 Summer League games. He looks athletic enough to me. He looks big enough. He certainly plays hard enough to defend. The question is going to be consistency level. Can the shot selection improve itself? And also strength, I would say. He's got to get a little bit stronger, it looks like. Now, he could get a shot off from anywhere. Like he looks a little bit, the mid-range shot looks a little like a D'Lo, where he gets to his spot. He's sometimes bigger than the other guard, or he doesn't elevate much on a shot, but he arcs it high enough to get it over a defender. That piece reminds me a little bit of D'Lo. In a good way. D'Lo's incredible from the mid range. I know I've said some stuff about D'Lo on the show, but like he's a great mid range, great strong. He's a very good mid range shooter. He can get his shot off from anywhere. I think that's true with Nadir Hifi. It's shot selection and some of that stuff that comes along with it. I don't know what his future is. He's still playing ball in Europe, and he was cut from Team France prior to the Olympics, prior to coming to Minnesota for Summer League training camp. The Wolves have already filled their two-way slots. They've got one standard roster spot. I don't think they're going to use it on Nadir Hifi unless they just are in love with what they've seen. I think the most likely scenario is the Wolves can try and convince him to take an Exhibit 10 and stay in the U.S. and probably make less money than he's making in Europe, but have a shot at the G League. If I'm him, I go back to Europe and dominate for another year and get a contract. I don't think there's any way the Wolves, I don't believe, unless I'm off base here, I don't believe there's any way they can like retain his rights. So that if he doesn't sign any sort of a contract, they didn't draft him, right? So I think the most likely scenario is he goes back to Europe and then ultimately finds a home in the NBA that may not be Minnesota. I like him though. I think he's got a future as a sixth man scoring guard. And if he continues to get better and bigger, stronger, he's got a shot at being a starting guard in the league. I don't think that's completely out of the question. All right. The Wolves play again tonight on Tuesday night. They are, of course, 2-0. And on Tuesday, they play 7 p.m. ESPN2 against the Sixers entry into the Las Vegas Summer League. And then after Tuesday, they play again on Thursday. Thursday's game is a 10 p.m. Central tip against the Houston Rockets on ESPN. So 2 more games, and then they get one more no matter what. If they go 4-0, they'll be in the semifinals, which happen on Sunday. So they get Friday, Saturday off. They play Sunday, and then the championship, I believe, is right away on Monday if they win the semifinals on Sunday. So we'll keep an eye on, of course, the results of the games. But what to watch for in terms of the players is Jalen Clark's offense. Can he get enough spot-up shooting opportunities where the Wolves feel comfortable with him? Like, hey, this dude's so good on defense. And by the way, if you missed Monday's show, I spent all of Monday talking Jalen Clark, Terrence Shannon Jr., Rob Dillingham, and Daishen Nix. That's what I talked about Monday. Jalen Clark, I said this Monday show, I thought he was the best player on the floor for long stretches of time. Fantastic defensively, good enough offensively, athletic, active. He looked more athletic than I believed he was based on his UCLA career. I thought that was going to be a challenge, and it may be longer term, but I thought he looked athletic enough to be a rotation player right away. So how does he hold up over the course of Summer League? Maybe the Wolves trim back his minutes as they go because he hasn't played in 14 months or whatever. Actually, more than that. It's more like 16 months, I think. So we'll see that. We'll see on that. We'd, of course, love to see Rob Dillingham shoot the ball better. The process has been very good. Let's pay attention to that. Terrence Shannon's consistency. Can he play this hard all the time? Can he do everything even when he doesn't have the ball in his hands? Is he still going to play hard defensively? I think that'll be really interesting. And Josh Minott, catch and shoot again. Like, can he get some catch and shoot opportunities? Can he make some threes? Can he pump fake and get to the cup, get to the line more often? We talked about or continue getting to the line often. Both he and Terrence Shannon, that's going to be key. If they're going to win that 10th man rotation spot, they both need to continue what they both should be very good at, which is getting to the free throw line. There were a lot of fouls called in the second Wolves Summer League game, not as many not so much in the first game, a lot in the second game. So we'll see. I mean, part of that was they just called everything in game 2, but both those guys should be able to get to the line with frequency. So we'll keep an eye on that in game 3 here on Tuesday. All right. Wednesday show, we'll talk all about Tuesday night's game. We'll talk about, what happens in that game. We'll talk key takeaways, may do studs and duds, may break out the old post-game pod from, it's been 6 weeks since the last post-game pod. So maybe we'll break that out on Wednesday. And we'll do that. And then the rest of the week, of course, we'll set you up with the rest of Summer League. We'll peek ahead to the rest of the summer. We're still daily right now through the month of July, Monday through Friday. A big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. And you can follow on X at Locked On T-Wolves and also at Beecken with 2 B's, 2 E's, C-K-E-N. Of course, the Locked On Wolves podcast is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Remember, the Locked On Network is your local experts on all the biggest stories. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.